Also be very careful to die. I wish daily, but truthfully, many times during the day. My flesh, a little ego eye, has incredible resilience. It just keeps popping up, even after in silence and contemplation, slave. It's exposed as a lie. It's exposed as static. Yet that is part of the process for me and for everyone on the path. As the ages appear to progress, every tongue eventually will confess the Lordship of Christ, the singularity of our parenthood. Call no man on earth your Father, even on this Father's Day, for there is one, that's our Father, who dwells in consciousness, who inhabits the body temple. It is that Father who is the life force within us, the sustaining, maintaining, creative power that keeps our body upright. It keeps our heart pumping, our blood flowing, our nervous system responding, reacting. It's not done by me. It's not done by you. It's not done by thought. It's not done by effort. It's done by the invisible. It's that invisible, infinite all of everything that I desire to express, to realize. What I know is at one point I was blind, and now I see. Although I admit I see as though gazing in a glass dimly. But there is a time coming where I will fully know, even as I am fully known. That is a topic of faith, an issue of realized truth, recognized truth, and appropriated truth. And that's much of this journey. I want to speak that to anxious hearts. Be patient with yourself. Be patient and relax. Because you in and of yourself can do nothing. But it's the Father who does the work. It's the Father who performs that which concerns us. It's the Father who perfects that which He began. And the reality is I'm awake, not by my own intellect or anything that I have done or contributed to possibly the allowance or the agreement of truth that I got in my eyesight, and I recognized it and I appropriated it. And I'm still in that process. You see, truth isn't really received because it is. It always is. It always was. It doesn't need to be received. It needs to be recognized, and it needs to be appropriated, integrated, because it runs contrary to the former paradigm. You know, whenever you recognize truth, you're recognizing it from a place that is not actively in that truth. And so acknowledgement there is that this truth now must be consumed and absorbed into the body, spiritual body, much as physical food needs to be taken in, assimilated, appropriated by the biology and physiology of our physical body. Deep calls unto deep. And truth is recognized because the spirit of truth is active in awakened consciousness. That is a work of grace that happens on behalf of each one of us when it happens. And when it happens, we are brought to a place where we must embark on a journey. It is a path to spirit, a path to wholeness, a path to union, a path to communion. Even when I was an evangelical pastor, I fit into the second category. The bulk of humanity who is on Broadway, the Broadway, wide gate, wide path, crowded path, meandering path, not leading straight line to truth. That's the path of us prior to illumination, to awakening, trapped into the distortion of the world, the hypnotism and lie that comes with the manifest world of form, matter, material. Of course, manifestation needs the opposites, the paradigm and structure of opposites, to even momentarily hold an appearance in this ever-moving, ever-changing world, which was created as a spiritual world by a spiritual creator who inhabits all of its creation. And most of humanity is in a darkened state relative to that spiritual world, even though we broker in religious thought, religious practice, religious language. That still is religion. Latin relingare, to relink. We know intuitively our dearth, our spiritual need, hard to articulate, easy to suppress, easy to forget about until crisis presents itself, until lack presents itself, until health presents itself, until discomfort comes. And then we are generally pretty quick to get back on the search because we want comfort, we want release, we want relief. We look for salvation and deliverance from our circumstances, from our conditions. It's natural. I am not criticizing it. I have brokered in it my whole life. I wish I didn't, but I still to this day fall back into it. But I realize it faster. And I come back to the straight and narrow a little quicker than I have in the past. And that happens by grace. I'm not saying this as though I have some spiritual prowess that others do not have. That's not the case at all. It's not me, nor is it anyone else who's doing that except Christ embedded into our individual consciousness. Is he there? Is it there? Yes, it is. Spiritual teaching, the attribute of God is omnipresence in orthodoxy, present always, everywhere. In my book, Beyond Orthodoxy, the transition of orthodoxy into a non-dual Christ-centered relationship, I wrote a little bit about it. And since then, have come to understand a little more, because I am on the path, and because on that path there is a developmental process that happens, that is happening to all of us who have entered the path and who have continued on in the path. There is a process. I'm not sure it's going to matter too much what the path is initially, because if one takes the path seriously, if one puts importance on that domain of life, then processes will happen. Processes that are beyond you, beyond me, initiated by grace, performed by a wisdom beyond us, and our role is to practice what has been put before us in the process that we found on the path. So track with me here. Developmentally, transitioning from pure, undiluted humanity into our spiritual nature, our spiritual reality. There will be a path that is presented, a path that we will discover, we will notice, we will be drawn to. There is a path. And with that path, there is going to be a series of processes that support the journey along that path. And our role is to engage in the practice of that revealed process. And in this pattern of path, process, and practice, there comes more and more influence from the spiritual domain as we transition out of pure, dense, mundane humanity into the realization of our true nature, which is the developing Christ consciousness within us who are awake. It is developing in me, and I have not attained it, seen it, I've tasted it, blessed by it, but I press on the high calling. I haven't attained it all. I don't think this earth platform is for that attainment, but it is for that orientation towards that attainment. And on this path, through these processes, in our process and practice, we learn more and more that the issue is not, Lord save me, Lord heal me, Lord bless me. It is a realization of the presence that is here. And that realization is the healing. That revelation is the provision. That realization is the reconciliation of these conditions that we have deemed less than the best. Now, for those who are in pursuit and awakening, those who have had a splash of light, they be redirected from those paths. And the more suitable one will present itself. And I say more suitable because I don't want to be dogmatic and make it sound like there's but one path, there's but one way, there's but one God, the author of truth. That truth is expressed in a multitude of ways, as much as that Christ is manifest in a multitude of personalities. Anyway, what am I talking about? The path, the process, and the practice. You have a part to play. But don't fool yourself and don't let your ego get on top of a pony and start riding a white horse into the sunset. It's far from that. It's much closer to habitual death, habitual surrender, habitual returning principles. The principles. The principles of spiritual life, moving beyond the mechanics of a religious life. There's less doing, much less doing, far more contemplation, meditation, silence. And that silence is where our realization of the presence of the infinite all of everything takes shape. It's not in the doing, it's not in doing more, and trying harder, and huffing and puffing, and blowing our sin away, quiet with some confidence. It's in rest and returning. That's Isaiah's prescription. That's where we realize our body is the temple. And presence, divine presence, will reveal itself in our individual consciousness to the degree that our individual consciousness is conditioned and acclimated to spiritual truth. Why am I saying all this? Because, well, I don't want you to be fatigued if you're new on the path. I don't want you to become weary if you're long on the journey and thinking it's not working. I'm saying this with a rear view mirror of 15 years now. On this path that has walked me out of evangelicalism, Protestant orthodoxy, into metaphysics, non-dual, unified idea of the perpetual presence of God within us, operating within us. And this brings me back to that point of omnipresence, all present. According to the letter of theology, yes, God is omnipresent. But in practical expression, that presence will only appear and manifest to the degree that an individual opens, expands, and brings forth a new consciousness, a different consciousness, a higher consciousness, spiritual consciousness. And that is not admixed with human effort. It's not based on desire. It's not based on need. It's not based on force. The spirit is the impeller inside. When the light comes on, the light's on. And it will shine in some of the darker corners. But it's not going to be a blistering light that overtakes everything in its path. Because we would be overwhelmed. Our humanity can't house all of that. And it will bring confusion and do damage. For most of us. I'd say almost all of us. Sure, there's a small percentage of advanced souls. Jesus was one of those advanced souls. Lao Tse was one of those advanced souls. Some of the Indian sages were in this advanced state, those practicing Advaita Vedanta, non-dual presence. So in my book, I talked about these transitions, and the third transition was the transition from the metaphysical to the mystical. But that's assuming you're on a path and the light's on and that spiritual work is active in you. For me, I had to get out of traditionalism first to even get into metaphysics. And that was a long slide because the paradigms are in many ways in opposition to each other. The former ways contemplating an outside God and figuring ways through penance and repentance, piety to get that God to come to the inside of us for our salvation. The non-dual metaphysical reality is that presence is available, ready, waiting for acknowledgement and entrance to a more fuller expression into consciousness. True. That has served me well. It has changed my life. But as you continue on the path, practicing within the process, what do I mean practicing? Meditation, contemplation, learning the letter of truth, learning the frailty of ego, the deception of appearance, those types of things. It's a long slide because as you're on there, light begets light. A little bit of light in one domain begins to reflect and inform on other domains. And light begets light. And so the shift from orthodoxy to metaphysics is fundamental for those of us who are in or coming out of orthodoxy. But then even on the metaphysical path, I am convinced that ultimately will lead to the mystical life, potential of aware oneness, aware unity with the King. It's in that transition we are confronted with the truth that we are not separate from God. That is a lie. That is a distortion. Jesus walking in the light said, I and my Father are one, not two. If you have seen me, you've seen the Father. Have you been with me so long? You say you don't know? Yeah, I'm with you, Philip. I've been on that path a decade and a half. I still have to practice that as a priority. Is Christ in the sleeping soul? Is he omnipresent? Yes. Waiting for recognition, acknowledgement, waiting, recognition and acknowledgement, and then actively bringing into our limited consciousness this new paradigm of presence. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Behold, I, the Christ within you, the I that dwells in your consciousness, the I that you say when you say I, that I, that eternal I, says, check it out, behold, look, consider, realize, I stand at the door and knock. Who's initiating this activity? The Christ within the I, that you are. I stand at the door. I stand. I knock. To all who open, to all, everyone who opens this door through acknowledgement and recognition, I will come to him, sup with him, intimate communion with the infinite all of everything. It is your birthright. It's my birthright. Sometimes I wake up and I don't immediately lay hold of that truth that I and my Father are one, not two. That divine presence is here. Fear not. Fear not. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will never leave thee. I will never forsake thee. Fear and faith do not mix well. They will not remain together. And the idea of separation brings with it instability, insecurity. Think about it. Contemplate. Quietly, though. It's not an intellectual attainment. It's not an intellectual math problem to work out. It's a state of awareness to be realized. And in that realization, the manifestation of Christ is real. Then it is the Spirit who does the work. I suppose the point of all of it is to encourage my own soul as I walk here in the North Carolina heat, this beautiful park. To remind myself and maybe anyone else who may happen to ever hear this meditation to slow down, to relax. It is okay to be where you are. In fact, it's the best place to be. Right where you are. Experience the reality of now. Not the guilt-ridden past, not the anxiety-laden future, but the perfection of right now. Begin to easily, quietly, softly recognize perfect love casts out fear. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. The chains that have bound you will dissolve in the presence of Christ active in your consciousness. The fetters and shackles that have held you bound to the addictions of this world, to sense, sensuality, coping mechanisms that temporarily feel good but ultimately tighten the links of the chain even more. You know, the realization of that presence now is salvation. It is freedom. It is yours to have. Quiet the mind, be still, and know that I am God. If it helps you, maybe say it this way. Be still and know that I is God. I is doing the work in you. I is never going to leave you. I is never going to forsake you. If you go into the heights of heaven, I is with you. If you make your bed in Sheol, I is there. That I is your I in consciousness. There is safety and security in that because our lives are hidden in Christ. So relax. Relax, release the grip, release the tension, release the doing, release the getting, the grabbing, the gaining, the plotting, the planning, the manipulating, the maneuvering. Let it fall to the side in silence, in stillness, in contemplation of the majestic presence that manifests in your consciousness. For as you practice that principle, you will realize that with that presence comes all that you need. For that Christ is your supply. That Christ is your health, is your strength, is your wisdom, is your provision, your support, your light, your life. Rest in that and behold the work of Christ in you, pouring its work in life through you as you allow it access to use you, and it will inhabit this world as you be quiet, be still, and be blessed.